This evening it's important to talk about not so much front lines as fault lines, not the clash of armies, but the tremors within Ukraine's fragile and emerging democracy. Today, tens of thousands of people took to the street in Kyiv, in Lviv, in Dnipro, Odessa, not to protest against Russian missiles, but against their own government, and their message was clear: hands off Nabu and Sapo. These are not just demonstrations, they're the first mass protests against President Zelensky since Russia's full-scale invasion, and they may mark the moment when wartime unity gave way to civic alarm. And at the centre of the storm is a controversial bill passing through Ukraine's parliament, and it gives the Prosecutor General, a presidential appointee, sweeping new powers over the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, NABU, and the Specialised Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, SAPO. And this includes the right to reassign investigations, to issue binding orders, and even shut down cases at the defence's request. These agencies were created after the 2014 Revolution of Dignity, with the backing of the EU, the US, and civil society, and they're Ukraine's bulwark against elite impunity. To see them dismantled in a single day, the bill passed committee, parliament, and speaker approval in mere hours, is nothing short of institutional sabotage, and the public response has been swift and visceral. War veterans, young citizens, civil society activists, anti-corruption campaigners rallied outside the presidential office. Chants of shame and veto the law echoed through the streets, and one protester held a sign reading "Welcome to Russia," a damning comparison that stings in a nation that has lost so much fighting authoritarianism. Veterans with prosthetic limbs, students with smartphones, activists with memories of Euromaidan united in indignation. Their cry was not only for institutional integrity, but for the soul of the Ukrainian state. In Lviv, people surrounded the statue of Taras Shevchenko, holding signs that warned of corruption as the death of the future. These weren't isolated outbursts, this was a national reckoning. President Zelensky has yet to publicly defend the law, but many believe it bears his fingerprints. His chief of staff, Andrei Yermak, is seen as the architect of this power grab. And the timing is suspect. The law comes just weeks after Nabu began investigating Alexei Chernyshov, a close Zelensky ally, and critics say the president is trading independence for loyalty and reform for control, and some call this the worst democratic retreat since Viktor Yanukovych. Indeed, Zelensky is accused of doing precisely what Euromaidan rose up to resist, bending institutions to serve a ruling clique, and with martial law in effect, elections suspended and opposition voices thinned by war, Zelensky faces little formal resistance except from the streets. And the backlash has not been confined to Ukraine. Brussels expressed serious concern, reminding Kyiv that billions in aid and EU accession talks are conditional on judicial reform and transparency. The European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Koss, said bluntly this is a serious step back. German diplomats warned that Ukraine would be judged by its adherence to the rule of law. Even former UK Ambassador Nigel Gould-Davies called it a mind-boggling, unforced error. It is more than a legislative blunder. It jeopardises the trust Ukraine has built with its Western allies and risks eroding support at a critical hour in its existential struggle. This isn't an isolated instance, part of a broader campaign against Ukraine's anti-corruption infrastructure. And days before the vote, the Security Service of Ukraine, the SBU, raided Nabu and Sapo offices, and 15 staff members were placed under investigation. Charges range from espionage to traffic violations. Activists like Vitaly Sabunin, once hailed by Zelensky himself, are now being prosecuted. Why? His crime? Accusing the Defense Ministry of mismanaging military procurement. In the words of Anastasia Radina, head of the Parliamentary Anti-Corruption Committee, a member of Zelensky's own party, the building is not just on fire, it has burned to embers. Ukraine's civil society is sounding a code red. The tragedy here is twofold. First, the institutions painstakingly built since 2014, Nabu and Sapo, and an independent judiciary risk being hollowed out by a presidential fiat. Secondly, the very credibility of Ukraine's democratic promise, the idea that this war is a fight for values, not just territory, is now in question. Zelensky's defenders argue that wartime necessitates strong leadership, but strong leadership doesn't mean unchecked power. Autocracy is not a price Ukraine can afford to pay. To fight Russian tyranny only to replicate its methods at home would be a grotesque irony. So as Western partners, journalists and academics, I think our task is clear. Support Ukraine militarily, but hold it democratically accountable. Aid mustn't come unconditionally. The values that Ukrainians are dying to defend must be protected from within and from without. Zelensky has a choice. He can sign the bill and weaken Ukraine's soul, or he can veto it and honour the promises of 2014. For now, thousands wait outside his office and history watches them.